Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to our Minnesota Salt Watch Kickoff. We'll get started here in just a minute or two as people are sort of trickling in. As you're coming into our webinar, I do have a couple of poll questions that we will be going through today. I think there's a total of 5, so bear with me through the poll questions. And I'll kick it off as you're coming in with our first poll question. This question is, how did you first hear about or get involved in SaltWatch? So you should see a poll question popping up on your screen here. How did you first hear about or get involved in SaltWatch? If for some reason you're not able to access the poll, just feel free to write your answer into the chat. We'd love to hear from you. So I'll give you about a minute to answer that question, and then we'll continue here with our webinar for Minnesota. So welcome everyone. As you're joining us, you should be able to see a poll question popping up on your screen. The question is, how did you first hear about or get involved in SaltWatch? If you could answer that poll, that would be fantastic. If you're not seeing it pop up on your screen as sort of a separate window or you can't answer it from there, please feel free to write into the chat. We'd love to hear about how you've gotten involved in SaltWatch. And also in the chat, we'd love to know also where you are tuning in from. I know that this webinar is Minnesota specific, but if you're outside of the state of Minnesota, that's okay too. We'd love to hear from you. You have about 10 more seconds to answer that poll question, or write that in the chat. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end that poll. Thank you for those of you who voted or submitted your answer. And we're going to go ahead and get started here with our webinar. So welcome to our Minnesota Saltwatch Kickoff. My name is Abby Heilman, and I am the Saltwatch Coordinator here at the Isaac Walton League of America. For those of you who might be unfamiliar with the Isaac Walton League, we're one of the oldest conservation organizations in the United States. We have around 200 chapters across the U.S. And about 40,000 members. And the league was founded in 1922 by a group of hunters and anglers looking to conserve habitats for future generations. And SaltWatch, as we'll talk about here today, is one of our clean water programs around monitoring for road salt pollution and advocating for smarter salting practices. I'm not going to go into a ton of background information here today because you'll hear that later in our kickoff webinar, our national kickoff webinar, which is scheduled for early November. But I will give a sort of quick background and then dive into some Minnesota-specific information, since this is, in fact, the Minnesota Saltwatch Kickoff webinar. So thank you for joining us here today. There are a number of misconceptions around road salt, that more salt equals more melting, that you should feel the crunch underfoot, but a little bit of salt goes a really long way in both polluting the environment and also helping to keep us safe during the winter time. That photo there on the left is sometimes what we see a lot of times on sidewalks or in parking lots, especially sometimes on roadways. But it is way too much salt. I'll go over this again at the end of the presentation here today, but a 12-ounce mug or your typical coffee mug holds enough salt to salt a 20-foot long driveway or 10 sidewalk squares, which is about 2 parking spaces. Those salt granules should be spaced out about 3 inches apart for the salt to work really the best that it can in a lot of those winter conditions. At about 15 degrees Fahrenheit, road salt, especially the sodium chloride that is the most commonly used and least expensive type of salt, it tends to stop working. And so you might consider using a different type of salt like magnesium chloride, which melts at lower temperatures, or switching to something that is traction-based like sand instead. With anything that you put down, there may or may not be some sort of environmental impact, so it's really good to sweep up either the salt or sand or whatever you're applying at the end of that storm or at the end of the winter season, just to sort of remove things from the environment before they create any sort of problems. And again, a little bit of salt goes a really long way, and we need salt to stay safe in the winter time, but there are a number of impacts that salt has, especially chloride, which is something that is contained within salt. So there's a number of different impacts. Wildlife are impacted, especially our freshwater aquatic life. A lot of those organisms, they live in freshwater and they're really not used to being in salty environments. So salt can negatively impact them. Salt can really, it's very corrosive. It can corrode our infrastructure, like our walkways, our sidewalks, our bridges, our pipes, lots of different things. And it can also impact our drinking water. Salt, sodium chloride especially, it's not something that can be filtered out by most of our wastewater treatment facilities or by something like a Brita filter. And it's something that's really, really hard to remove from our waterways. So folks who are on low sodium diets or low salt diets, maybe you have hypertension and are on a really restricted salt intake, you might not realize that you're getting additional salt from your drinking water. And so that can be a really big impact to you personally. Habitat can be impacted as well. A lot of that turf grass and maybe native plant gardens and trees and shrubs and things that are planted next to sidewalks or parking lots or roadways, they can get sort of sprayed with salt and can dry out and desiccate as a result of winter salt application. And our pets can be impacted by salt as well. If they're stepping on that granule salt, it can hurt their paw pads. They can lick their paws and sort of ingest additional salt and get sick from that as well. And there's a number of impacts sort of beyond what we have here on the screen, but salt does in fact impact a lot of things. And we'll hear more about that in our November webinar. So if you haven't registered for that yet, you might consider doing so soon. There's really no feasible way to remove salt once it enters the environment, so we consider it to be a permanent pollutant. It only takes 1 teaspoon of salt to permanently pollute 5 gallons of water. Typically, when you go to the store, you're buying a bag of salt that's a 50-pound bag. A 50-pound bag of salt has the potential to pollute 10,000 gallons of water, which is about the size of a residential swimming pool. So a little bit of salt, again, goes a really long way. We, again, still do need it during the winter time to stay safe, but we can certainly be a little bit more mindful about the amount of salt that we are applying during the winter season. So SaltWatch was launched in 2018 with a number of goals. One, to raise awareness in the general public about the connection between salt and stream health, to identify chloride hotspots in freshwater, and to advocate for smarter salt application of that road salt by sharing the results of our program with private landowners and local and state agencies. And the way that we're getting this data is we actually, through our program, are able to send out SaltWatch kits to anyone who's interested in monitoring with us. So we send them out. They're free kits in a standard business envelope. You sign up on our website, saltwatch.org, and write in what address you'd like our kits to be mailed to, and we'll mail it directly to that address. Each kit contains 4 test strips, sample testing instructions, so how to take that sample, how to upload the data to our online database, the Clean Water Hub, and then also a conversion chart, which is that white postcard that you're seeing on the picture there on the right, which helps you to convert the units of the test strips into chloride, which is what we're testing with our program, because again, that is that component of road salt. We really would not be able to do this program without the support of our SaltWatch partners. Nationwide, we have about 64 official SaltWatch partners and around 600 participating organizations. So you are really the key of how this program has been so successful. So thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for all of the amazing work that you're doing within your organizations and within your communities. It really, really makes a really big difference. Just to show you some data, so this is data since the beginning of the program, since it was launched in 2018 until today, actually. So over 22,000 data points nationwide. The dots that you're seeing, if you look at the map there on the left, the larger the dot or circle, the more data we have collected in that particular location. And the color of the circle or dot corresponds with what that sort of average chloride concentration is from the data that we've received. So 27% of the samples we've received are considered excellent. Those are actually below the range of the test strips that we are using through the SaltWatch program. So between 0 and 30 parts per million or milligrams per liter. 41% of the samples are considered to be fair. Nationally, fresh water is considered to be, fluoride is considered to be naturally occurring in fresh waterways up to around 100 parts per million. In some places, that number is a little bit lower or significantly lower. For instance, where I'm at in Maryland, that number is closer to about 50 parts per million before it becomes really concerning. So we consider, just as a nationwide program, any samples that are between 30 and 100 parts per million to be fair. Anything that is above that 100 parts per million range, we consider to be poor. So 19% of the samples we've received have been between 100 and 230 parts per million. 230 parts per million is the threshold where it becomes, the chloride in the water becomes toxic to freshwater aquatic life. It's sort of a chronic level. And then at 860 parts per million, it becomes really sort of instantly toxic to a lot of our freshwater aquatic life. So anything above 230 parts per million, we consider to be toxic. So nationwide, we've received about 13% of the samples back, which are toxic. Focusing in then to Minnesota, throughout the entire program, we've received 1,581 data points, 1,581. 33% of those samples have been excellent, 26% of the samples are fair, 13% poor, and 28 of those samples are toxic. Focusing in on our last season in Minnesota, so that was running from the beginning of July to the end of June 24. So 261 data points have been reported last year in Minnesota, 41% excellent, 42% fair, 11% poor, and 6% of those samples are toxic. You will notice if we go back, especially to the nationwide data, you'll notice that especially at sort of more northern regions where we do get a lot of snow, especially in those metropolitan areas, there's a lot of impervious surfaces. So a lot of roadways and sidewalks and things that end up being salted in the wintertime because there's such a concentration of people in those areas. And so a lot of those regions, they tend to have higher chloride levels as well. So just something to point out as we're sort of going through some of this data here today. And then since the beginning of July of this year until today, we've received 34 data points from Minnesota. So 26% of the samples excellent, 59% fair, 3% poor, and 12% of those samples are toxic. All of this data is going into the Clean Water Hub, which is our national water quality database. And we really created the hub with public accessibility in mind. It's accessible to the public, it's free. Data is really meant to be easy to access, understand, and share. And we have a number of different color-coded interactive maps to help you really go through a lot of that data. Once that data is in the hub, we do share it with the US EPA annually, especially some of our really high quality data, like our VASOS data, which is Virginia Save Our Streams, which is a pretty rigorous benthic monitoring program. But we have been sharing SaltWatch data with different government entities as well. And all of the data on the hub is accessible and available to government agencies and water quality organizations. If they're tracking best management practices and restoration, things like that, or identifying areas in need of further study, which is one of those things that SaltWatch, I think, does a really good job of, is really learning about what's happening in our own backyards and really targeting some of those areas that might need additional monitoring. Internally, within our clean water team, we use this data as sort of an externally facing annual report, use it for updates to volunteers and then outreach to media sources. And then all of you as clean water advocates, you can access this data as well and use it as sort of to back up letters to the editor, to contact local and state representatives, and to educate the folks around you, educate community members about what's happening in your environment. Because as we know with chloride, it's not something that's super visible in the water. It doesn't necessarily turn the water a different color or anything. And so we don't really know what's happening within our environment, within our backyards, the streams that we care about, until we actually go out and monitor them. So another poll question for you, and I'll go ahead and set that up. So this poll question is, what have you done beyond monitoring? Have you talked to a neighbor? Have you reduced salt at home? Maybe you've written a letter to the editor. That's what that LTE is when you see that up on the screen. Have you submitted an action alert? Have you gone to a local town hall? What have you done? It doesn't have to be something that I've listed, but if you've done something beyond monitoring, what are some of those things that you've done? And I'll give you about 2 minutes to answer that question. So about 1 more minute. What have you done beyond monitoring? Thirty more seconds. And feel free to put this answer in the chat if for some reason the poll question is not coming up for you. About 10 more seconds. Okay, thank you for those of you who answered our poll question. I'm going to go ahead and close this poll and continue on. Okay. So something that we've been really trying to do with the SaltWatch program is take that data that we have and turn that into some sort of action. It doesn't have to be something huge. You don't have to end up on TV to be considered a really great action that you've taken. Simply reducing salt at home, talking to your neighbor, those are excellent ways to make a difference. A lot of times we don't think that it makes a big difference, but it really does. If every one of us starts reducing road salt at home and starts talking to our neighbors and really spreading the word, that does make a really, really big impact at the end of the day. So there have been some salt watchers who've done some larger actions or different actions. They maybe have talked to their neighbors at home. They have reduced salt at their house, but maybe they've done some other things too, like write an opinion piece in the Washington Post, contacted their local radio or newspaper and wrote a letter to the editor, talked to their local and state representatives, attended an EAC meeting or a town hall, and talked a little bit about road salt pollution. There's so many different things that you can do to make a really big impact. And it really just starts with this program and learning more about what's happening in our own environment, in our own backyards. So another poll question, I know we just answered one. This one is, what is a Salt Watch action you plan to take this year? Write an LTE, that's that letter to the editor. Write a letter to a representative, talk to your neighbor, reduce salt at home, or maybe you're going to do other. If you're going to do other, please write in the chat what that other action is. I'll give you about a minute to answer this question. It is multiple choice, so you can select multiple things with this one. So about 10 more seconds. Thank you, Michelle, for writing into the chat some of the other things you plan on doing. And Barbara, thank you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end this poll. Thank you for all of your answers. And we will share some of these if we have time at the very end too. Some of those actions you plan to take later this year. We do have a number of resources to help you take some of these actions. These resources are at saltwatch.org under our What You Can Do page. Some of the resources include fact sheets, drinking water, chloride in drinking water, chloride in infrastructure, different flyers that you can print out and hand out to different groups if that's something you're interested in doing. We do have an advocacy guide about Salt Watch and really how to start a Salt Watch campaign in your community. Some of those items that are in there is really conversation starters with different groups like HOAs or condo associations, Department of Transportation for hire road salt applicators who are in the private sector, letters to representatives and to the editor. Lots of different things can be found here in this advocacy guide, lots of different resources. Some of our resources are also in Spanish. We're working to add more of those as we continue. And then there are a number of template letters, letters to representatives, and then local letters to representatives as well. We've recently added a faith-based communities toolkit. This is on our Saltwatch Gaithersburg page, but certainly something that you can download if you are part of a faith-based community and would like to sort of have smart salting at your congregation be a mission for this year, for the coming years. Is sort of a way to make your congregation a little bit more green and eco-friendly. We do have a toolkit for Isaac Walton League chapters. This can also be used for watershed organizations as well, just some tips for monitoring, outreach, and advocacy. And then we do have a really cool event toolkit. It's our Paint the Plow program toolkit. So if you've thought about doing some watershed art and want to get your local Department of Transportation involved, this is something that you can certainly download and use. We have a lot of the lessons learned from our time doing this program, but you can also contact me if you have any questions as well. And we do have a new resource that Heather Wilson made. She's sort of our chat bot today for this webinar. She's also our Midwest Save Our Stream coordinator and who also runs our Nitrate Watch program. So this is a whole resource, letter to the editor and op-ed guide. So feel free to check that out as well. It's available on our website. Another poll for you. And we have one more poll after this. So, what could help you leap the hurdle of going beyond monitoring and complete some sort of advocacy action? So if you've been monitoring, what is something that could really help you, a tool or a resource, or maybe a conversation, something like that, that could really help you to complete some sort of advocacy action? So I'll give you about a minute to answer that question. About 30 more seconds to complete this poll question. What could help you leap the hurdle of going beyond monitoring and complete some sort of advocacy action? Need about 10 more seconds. 5 more seconds. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end this poll. Thank you for those who have voted, submitted your answers. Okay. Locally, just to show you some of the things that we've been doing as part of our outreach, we do table at a number of local events like farmers markets throughout the year, but also different festivals. This 2 weekends ago, we tabled at our local Oktoberfest. And so we had some different messaging for that. No clean water, no good beer, really trying to meet people where they are. We also do a couple of hiking events every year. So a couple weeks ago, we did a walk in the woods. So we took people on a hike and did some monitoring as we were walking around. So a really fun way to engage different audiences. And then we have been hosting the last couple of years different smart salt applicator training programs where we contracted Bolton and Menk, who does, I believe, the Minnesota pollution control training for sidewalks and parking lots. So a really, really awesome training, trying to get more road salt applicators really aware of some of the problems and impacts that chloride has in some ways to reduce their salt application and save both them and business owners money by reducing the amount of salt that they apply every year. And I did want to share this with you. Minnesota Pollution Control Agency has a smart salting tool. And this tool, you do have to sign up and create an account. It is free, but it's really, really, I think, quite a valuable resource. And a lot of states do not have this. So I think this is something that if you have not used this, please feel free to go and check this out. I think Heather might be able to put the link here in the chat in a moment. But the Smart Salting Tool by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, it helps you to, what I use it for mostly is to evaluate chloride sources throughout the state, but you can also make like action plans and it can be used really beyond just an information gathering tool. So we'll go through some of the different things that you can use this tool for, or see really with this tool. So you can evaluate the chloride sources for different counties throughout the state. There's a drop-down menu to pick some of those counties, or you can just click directly on the map. And Heather put the link for the Smart Salting tool there in the chat, so you can access that later. So for instance, if I click on St. Louis County, this is this pie chart shows you really where all of those chloride sources are coming from. If it's from a dust suppressant, water softener, discharge, fertilizer, winter maintenance. We focus a lot on road salt pollution, but chloride does come from a number of different sources. And so trying to reduce one of those sources or multiple of those sources will really help us go a long way to reducing that chloride pollution within the environment throughout the state of Minnesota. So once you've clicked on that county and you see the chloride sources on that pie chart, you can evaluate some of those chloride sources. That's that button sort of the bottom right. And it brings you to this page, which has just so much really, really, really great information. You'll see sort of under where it says chloride environmental impacts, that there's background information there's background monitoring, and then background policies and education. So we're going to go through some of these today. So under the background about, it gives you a lot of great information about how chloride works, different sources of chloride, environmental impacts, and infrastructure impacts. And it just has a lot of great information and some links that are included in that as well. If you click on number 2, background data and monitoring, it gives you chloride standards, impaired waters, and then also some information on monitoring for chloride. So just to show you what the impaired waters look like here in Minnesota, the purple that you're seeing on this screen, that is areas that have road density of greater than or equal to 18%. So really urbanized areas. The dots and lines that are blue, those are areas that are not impaired. The little squiggles, those are areas that may or may not be impaired. If they're red, like the squiggles around Duluth and especially the Twin Cities region, those are impaired streams that have been assessed for chloride. The sort of orangish yellow squiggles are not impaired but are high risk. And then any of those dots that are red and sort of that yellow-orange color, those are lakes and wetlands that have been assessed for chloride, red being impaired, and then the sort of orange-yellow are not impaired but high risk. So I think this map is very interesting because it really shows you those areas that have really high levels of impervious surfaces, like in the Twin Cities region. And then, of course, because of that, there's a lot of impaired, especially streams and other waterways in that area. So going through further on the Smart Salting tool, you can also click on background and it gives you some policies and information on how to educate the public and staff. Some really great resources on this page. If you look up the Minnesota statewide chloride management plan, which I've stolen some pictures for this presentation today, that has a lot of really, really great resources as well. So feel free to check that out. And I do have a QR code for that later. So just to go through some of the counties where a lot of our SaltWatch partners, official SaltWatch partners operate. This is Carver County, so sort of near the Twin Cities region. And I'll show a map a little bit later in the presentation, really showing some of the water hardness of the area, which is what those water softeners are used for. But pay attention to the number of tons for each thing, because there's still for everything, even if water softener discharge is sort of the biggest contributor of chloride in an area, there's still a ton, take that as a pun or not, of winter maintenance salt going into that area. So this is sort of chloride sources for the Carver County region. For Hennepin County. So just again, this is where a lot of that impervious surface is. And so many pounds, so many tons of that salt that's being applied, even if there's still a lot of salt going into the water softener discharge as well. Dakota County. Anoka County, Crow Wing. And so for this particular county, there's significantly less salt being used for winter maintenance than there were in the Twin Cities metro region, but it's still a lot of salt. So it's, I think, good information to be aware of as you're sort of going throughout the state. So a really, really awesome resource. This comes from that the statewide management plan that I mentioned earlier. So just showing some of the water hardness throughout Minnesota. There's just a huge concentration, especially within the Twin Cities region. And then I wanted to show some population. You probably already know this. There's a lot of people within the Twin Cities region, but that can certainly be a big contributor of road salt within the area, just because there's so much more impervious surface. This is road density, so same thing where there's a lot of population, there's a lot of roads typically. And then again, going back to what I showed earlier, the impaired waterways throughout Minnesota, just to sort of wrap up all of the figures that I've showed already. So if you're interested, Heather put both of these links in the chat, so it's really easy to access. If you'd like to scan them via QR code, those QR codes should take you to those websites. Again, the Smart Salt tool, you will have to create an account for, but it is a free resource, and I think it is really, really valuable for the state of Minnesota. I wish our state had something like that to really evaluate where all of the chloride is coming from for each county. And then there's the Minnesota Statewide Management Plan, which I think just has so much good information in it. So if you haven't seen that, definitely check that out. And we are coming to our last poll question here today. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that. And it is multiple choice, but if you could pick one, which one would it be? So which salt reduction message most resonates with you? Salt responsibly and protect your pet's feet. Salt responsibly and save money. Salt responsibly and protect drinking water. Salt responsibly and protect infrastructure. Or salt responsibly and protect native plants and animals. So I'll give you about a minute to respond to this. And again, if you're feeling strongly about multiple of the messages, please feel free to select a couple of those. And while you're voting for this, I do have a really good question in the Q&A. Do you have any information on how salting is affecting the Mississippi River and if there are any movements dedicated to raising awareness in states that border the Mississippi? That's a really, really great question. I don't have anything offhand, but if any of our partners would like to chime in sort of at the end of this webinar, I'll bring this question back up because if anyone does have that information, I would love to see it or hear a little bit more about it. So we'll come back to that question at the end. But, and especially for our program, a lot of those areas we don't have a ton of data for, but that's something that would be great is to get more data in those regions. So thank you for that question. And again, I'll come back to that. So I'm going to go ahead and end this poll so we can continue. Thank you for all of your responses. And as long as we have time at the end, we can go through some of those questions. Just to leave you with a couple of messages. So some things that you can do that are really easy to do at home to reduce the amount of salt on your property if you are a homeowner is to shovel early and often, remove that snow before it turns into ice. That's a really easy way to reduce the amount of salt that you have to apply. And then you can scatter salt. So a 12-ounce mug, which is your typical coffee mug or drinking mug, holds enough salt salt to treat a 20-foot long driveway or 10 sidewalk squares, which is about 2 parking spaces. And then you can sweep up any excess salt stored in a closed container and use that during the next storm event. So a really easy way to keep salt out of the environment and save you money at the end of the day as well. And I did want to put out a plug for this. We will be getting more information the closer we get to this event, but the last couple of years, Wisconsin Saltwise in Wisconsin has promoted Winter Salt Awareness Week. This year, this coming year, January 27th through 31st, 2025, is really a nationwide effort to promote Winter Salt Awareness Week. So if you are not already thinking about doing something with your organization, please feel free to get in contact with me or talk a little bit more amongst yourselves, and we'll be sharing more information as we receive it to really promote Winter Salt Awareness Week as a nationwide effort. So there'll be a number of speakers, and there'll be some statewide speakers, some national speakers, and then the 31st is a monitoring day, and they want us to really invite the press and come out and monitor with us. So something to think about. And again, we'll be sharing more information as that becomes available. So thank you so much for attending my portion of the presentation. I do want to transition over and introduce some of our partners who will be speaking. So our first speaker here today is going to be Kayla with the North St. Louis Soil and Water Conservation District. So I will go ahead and stop my sharing and give the floor over to Kayla so she can share a little bit about her organization and what you've been up to.
Awesome. Thank you, Abby. Just gonna go ahead and share my screen. I usually work on Teams, so bear with me. This isn't a smooth transition. Okay. All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep, looks good on my end.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Abby. Yeah, so my name is Kayla Natwara, also Kayla Beeman. And I wanted to share a little bit about the St. Louis River One Watershed, One Plan. So like Abby said, I am with the North St. Louis Soil and Water Conservation District. We are based out of Virginia, Minnesota, which is up on the Iron Range of Minnesota. I am the St. Louis River Watershed Conservationist. I joined the SWCD this past January and became a saltwash partner quickly after that. So we're still kind of in our beginning stages of the partnership, but I kind of just wanted to give some background on our chloride reduction goals, kind of the St. Louis River One Watershed, One Plan, and where we hope the partnership to go. So starting with what is a One Watershed, One Plan? So I think it's kind of important to talk about this because this is mainly where I am working out of and where we have identified chloride pollution. So I am in the St. Louis River watershed. So looking at the map, that's going to be kind of this tannish highlighted area. And so this is the St. Louis watershed, and this is the area that's covered in the St. Louis River One Watershed, One Plan. And so what is a One Watershed, One Plan? It's a different way to manage water on a watershed-wide scale. So as many of you know, water doesn't really abide by jurisdictional boundaries. It doesn't see that it's crossing into a county and changes its ways. So this is a way that Minnesota is starting to manage water, looking at the watershed wide versus county boundaries. And so this One Watershed, One Plan really encourages local governments and other organizations to collaborate to manage the water together, to manage the water as a watershed instead of by jurisdictional boundaries. So Looking at the map, I'm kind of up here over in that Hibbing area. And we have 7 partners on this One Watershed, One Plan: St. Louis County, Carlton County, South St. Louis Soil and Water Conservation District, Carlton Soil and Water Conservation District, as well as Lake Soil and Water Conservation District, as well as the Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa, which is down here, kind of in that striped mark area. And so the St. Louis River One Watershed, One Plan area covers 3,000 square miles, includes over 500 lakes and 2,000 miles of streams. And all of this water eventually makes its way into the St. Louis River and then out into Lake Superior. So just kind of wanted to give context of kind of what the spirit of this plan is and our partners on it. And so the One Watershed, One Plan is a 10-year plan. And in this plan, we have identified specific goals and specific priorities that are emerging in the St. Louis River specifically. So during the planning process, resource concerns were broken down into 5 different priority categories, including watershed surface water quality, drinking water protection, land use, altered hydrology, and habitat. And then from those 5 priority issue categories, 15 10-year goals were identified. So again, this is a 10-year plan. And at the end of this 10 years, we are hoping to have, successfully achieve these specific 15 goals. And the goals are broken up by planning area as well as priority watershed. So kind of this top graph, again, the outline of each of the colors is the different planning areas that make up the entire St. Louis watershed. So there are a couple different planning areas. You have St. Louis North, St. Louis South, the Cloquet, Upper Whiteface, Fond du Lac Reservation, as well as the Duluth area and Lake Superior streams. So to help kind of manage this really big watershed a little bit easier, we have specific planning areas. And then in those specific planning areas, we have also identified priority smaller watersheds. And basically, the reason that these smaller watersheds were identified is our thinking is if we're able to do work in these watersheds, we will see a bigger impact and more significant results. One thing that this plan also does is, although we have 5 different planning areas and there are 15 goals that were identified as the plan as a whole, each planning area has different actions and different smaller goals that are identified and addressed. Again, just to be able to specifically look at the area and see what resource concerns there are. And so when we get to our 15 10-year goals, one of the main issues that were identified in this plan is chloride pollution. And so at the end of our 10-year goal, this is the goal that we hope to achieve, is to manage chlorides reaching surface and groundwater from road salts and water softener salts by ensuring 60% of municipalities have Smart Salt certified staff, 60% of communities achieve level 2 certified, and education outreach to 100% of priority landowners. So this kind of tags on to what Abby was sharing about MPCA and their smart salting tool. And so this is a really big goal. Like I said, it was 3,000 square miles of a watershed. There's many municipalities, there's many partners. So getting to this 60% and getting to this 100% of education outreach to priority landowners is quite a big goal. And so having such a big goal, it's a little bit easier to break it out by certain actions that will bring us and lead us to hopefully achieve this 10-year goal. And if you look at our plan, the St. Louis River Watershed Plan, it is on our website. But this is what you can find in it, and it's a specific table. And so each of these 10-year goals have a specific planning table on how you're going to reach that goal. And so this is going to be specifically for my planning area up in North St. Louis. And this is specifically for smart salting. So as you can see on the left, there's all these different actions that we hope to achieve, such as outreach to 9 municipalities on salt use, tracking salt use to determine salt trends. So we have all these very specific smaller actions to hopefully reach our 10-year goal. And that brings me to the smartwatch partnership. So I just started in January, and it's a big watershed. It's a lot of goals to tackle. And one thing about the chloride pollution goal is it is a watershed-wide goal. We are hoping to see chloride reductions across the entire watershed, across all the planning areas, and we're really hoping to be able to collaborate across this jurisdictional boundaries to engage as many organizations, municipalities as we can to help reduce chloride. So many of our goals address public engagement and awareness of chloride pollution and how best management practice can lower chloride use. One thing about our organization is we are not a monitoring agency, but I was really interested in joining SaltWatch as a partner because I think that participatory science of the SaltWatch can help integrate a feeling of stewardship and collaboration that hopefully and eventually leads to best management practices and spreading awareness. So we're still really in the early stages of this partnership and really getting underway on trying to reach some of our chloride goals. So I just wanted to share a little bit about, our organization, what are our chloride goals identified in this plan, and just kind of open the floor and have an open conversation of how we can meet these goals and lower chloride pollution across our watershed. So I'm happy to take any suggestions or any questions.
Thank you so much, Kayla. I really love the idea of the one watershed, one plan. I know a lot of organizations kind of struggle doing just their little part of the pie, and it's hard to get funding at the watershed level in a lot of cases too. So I love that it's something that you're able to do across the watershed and really have sort of, even though they might seem like lofty goals, really achievable things that can be done throughout the watershed. And I think we need a lot more of that across the country. So that's great. Does
Yeah,
anyone,
absolutely. I was excited to learn that Minnesota is really switching its management on water. And I think that it will just, help achieve these bigger goals and being able to collaborate and work together. I think that, we'll see a bigger impact and benefits on our watershed and our water.
absolutely. And certainly a model that I think a lot of other places can follow too.
Absolutely.
Does anyone have any questions for Kayla? Please feel free to put those in the chat. Okay, if you do have any questions, again, put those in the chat. We're gonna move on. We did schedule this webinar, so it could be up to an hour and a half. We'll try to keep it maybe a little bit over an hour today. So we understand that if anyone has to leave after 1 o'clock, please feel free, do the things that you need to do, but we will keep going. And again, this is recorded, so if you do miss the end of this webinar, we will have a recording of that. But I do want to share some of the responses that we have from the survey at the end, as long as we have some time. So if you have any questions for me or for Kayla, please feel free to put those in the chat and we'll get those answered at the end of the webinar. And for now, I'm going to go over and share my screen again, and I'm going to kick this over to Dawn, who is going to be speaking a little bit more about Coon Creek Watershed District. So whenever you're ready, Dawn, take it away.
Thank you, Abby. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. So thank you for having me today for this great program. My name's Dawn Doring. I'm with Coon Creek Watershed District. I am the information coordinator here. And I have been with the district since 2006. And Salt Watch has really been a great addition to our suite of opportunities for volunteers to participate. Next slide, please. So the Coon Creek Watershed District is 107 square miles, a little bit smaller than St. Louis River Watershed. We are located wholly within Anoka County, which is in the North Metro area. If you remember Abby's slides with the metro area and a lot of the purple and the red squiggles. Well, we are in that area where recently we are finding more and more chloride in our waters. And so if you could move ahead to the next slide. Our primary function has been originally was mostly as the drainage authority in the area. And then as water quality has become more and more an issue, and we became an MS4, which is a means we have legal standards we have to meet for the Clean Water Act. And so stormwater pollution and water quality have become more and more front and center, although we still work very strongly with preventing localized flooding as well. Next slide, please. We are a local governmental unit. We are like a school district. And so our funding is property tax based. And so we are able to do some things a little more easily than the larger watersheds like St. Louis with the one watershed, one plan system. It's really great to see that watersheds are highlighted that way as a way of being able to manage water. It works really well to work across political boundaries, since water doesn't know political boundaries. So we had started in 2020 to do some of our own monitoring with our staff on chlorides. We are building out our monitoring system within our watershed, and this was one of the early things that we started doing. And of course, we had a very small staff at that time, and so we were wanting to look for hot spots more. And we heard of this program, and so we thought citizen monitoring could help assist with that. So other opportunities we've had, if you can move to the next slide. For our volunteers, we've been doing trash cleanups around creeks and ponds for a long time. Next slide, please. We started a storm drain stenciling program for people to do, which is for a little bit larger groups and more like Girl Scouts and civic groups to do, and lake associations. Next, please. Then we kind of added in the Adopt a Drain program, which started in the city of Minneapolis, and then was opened up as a pilot and was opened up to other partners. And we found that this was a program that worked well for people who wanted to do individual actions. They didn't need to be part of a group to do volunteering and get recognition. And then people start getting used to doing online reporting through this program. And so that became popular. And another volunteer opportunity we have, this kind of work together with the Adopt a Drain, and next slide, please, is our Citizen Advisory Committee, which is a group of citizens representing different areas of our watershed. It is mandated by state for watershed districts to have a citizen advisory committee, and it is advisory primarily on projects and budgets, but we've also used it here. They're doing a planning exercise called the Watershed Game, which helps citizens to understand the kind of trade-offs, gives and takes in doing development versus conservation of areas. So it's not directly salt related. But one of the people and members in this photo here, this is from 2018 actually, actually a couple members are members of also the Isaac Walton League. And so one of them brought to us in 2019, I think it was, just dropped off this newsletter, I think it was, or magazine that said something about this new Salt Watch program. And so this person is very concerned about the salt on the roadways, and here shows up this article about this new program. And at the same time, in the same photo, we had a brand new position created here for focusing on outreach. So while we were starting this monitoring program of our own with our staff on that chloride in our lakes and some of our streams, we also had the CAC member bring to us this new opportunity from the Isaac Walton League, while we had this new outreach specialist who could spend time on that. Otherwise, it was me doing the outreach, the education component, and dealing with like the website and information part of kind of the social engagement, citizen engagement aspect of the organization. So next slide, please. We decided to pilot the program. And here we provided volunteers with 4 test strips and instructions on how to sample. And as we became an official partner with the Isaac Walton League, but we wanted to keep it, at the time, the program was different than it is now. And so to keep it really localized for us, we ended up designing our own postcards and putting our local information on that. But we did also use the Water Reporter app. That was the way to submit data. Next slide, please. So this was the Isaac Walton League's submission card that you take a photo and upload to the app. Maybe you've all done that before. Next slide, please. And we ended up taking that in the center. We devised our own logo and put our contact information on there for our local groups that we were presenting to be able to contact us. So you'll see here we have the Anoka Ramsey Community College on the left. Those were all the catch basins. Yes, thank you. All the catch basins in the area there for that group. And Britta had gone out and presented to their sustainability class about this way to gain data and also give them something to do, participatory, learn about science, while also providing information for us looking for hotspots on chloride. And if you'll notice on the south or the bottom there, that is the Mississippi River that the campus is right on. Yes, thank you. So what an ideal place for people to do monitoring for us. And as it turned out, that worked really well during the pandemic. Britta also presented to our lake associations. We only have 2 within our district, but we've been actively involved with them for many years with their lake management plans. And so people they're very active lake associations. And so we got them involved as well. And then we had individuals join in as the program got spread through our newsletter articles that were out and social media. And I don't know if you're going to talk about this. I meant to ask you, Abby, but this is one of our, on the right, this is one of our star volunteers, Vincent, a 5th grader who really took this program and ran with it. He and his mom had first heard about Adopt a Drain, and from Adopt a Drain program through us, they discovered Salt Watch, and he started monitoring different streams in the area and had his eyes were really open to how much chloride there is in our water and the impacts on that. And it became a science fair project. And that was highlighted in the blog for the Isaac Walton League. So you can read all about it there. And he is just amazing as a student. Next slide, please. So we continued the program after the pilot. It was, like I say, it was really popular during the pandemic shutdown. We had the Anoka Ramsey environmental science professor contact us, and we worked hand in hand with them, providing materials, because at that time the Salt Watch program was one person at a time, and they wanted to do it for a class of 30 students. And so we were the go-between, and we were able to order supplies and put together kits and then get them delivered to the teacher to hand out, be able to hand out to students who could then submit their data individually in a safe manner. And that worked really well. And that may be something, Abby, to bring up later, is about group involvement and that possibility, because I think that has changed. So these were just what I'm displaying here is just our own, how we had customized it for our local during the pandemic. And then what people are doing now is being able to use the Isaac Walton League entry forms. And so next slide, please. Why are we concerned about it? Because of all the other reasons that Abby had brought up already, as far as, impacts on the aquatic life, but also Coon Creek and other creeks that drain directly to the Mississippi River that are under our jurisdiction all go into the Mississippi River, and it's just upstream of where drinking water is taken in for much of Minneapolis and then some of St. Paul as well. So their drinking water intakes are just downstream from where our streams go. So we take very seriously trying to reduce pollution in our area for downstream people as well as for our local aquatic life. Now, since then, next slide, please. We've had official chloride impairments. We did not until just recently for these 3 creeks, not Coon Creek itself, which is about 27 miles long, but for our more southern part of our region, which is our district, which is more heavily populated and a lot more impervious surface area there from roads. So even we have this one lake that's really shallow. It's only about 4 feet deep, and it's really kind of more of a large wetland, but that is our one lake that is impaired for chloride impairments. And one of the things about it is that it's surrounded by large highway systems, including Highway 65, if you're familiar with the metro area, and county and state Highway 10. So we are dialing in to find out what could be done within our partner jurisdictions and organizations and agencies on reducing the salt that's going into Laddie Lake. We have been doing trainings here, the MPCA trainings, since 2010 was our first training for all our local city staff. And we had about 100 people at that first training. And since then, they have continued to do those trainings, and we try to make sure that staff get regular access to those trainings as much as possible and host those. So that's another kind of component of what we're doing for SALT as far as training and education goes. And then I want to end with the last slide on our key points is that Salt Watch really worked great for us during the pandemic. We are so grateful to have that opportunity for our activist volunteers in the community. And it helped confirm some things we found in our initial surveying on chloride. We are beefing up that program now internally, and we have someone, also a specialist, come on board who is doing monitoring for various things within our district now. The one thing that was tricky and needed a lot of our help, staff time, was the Water Reporter app. So we are really happy to see that the Clean Water Hub is up and how easy it is to use. And so from now on, we are not going to be doing our customized postcards at all. Isaac Walton League, you've really taken this and run with it, and we appreciate it for allowing groups to now participate more easily, and also for the Clean Water Hub to be such an easy access point for people to upload their data and then for you to share it with us. So at that, I'd like to thank you for having us, and also we'll stick around for any questions that people have.
Thank you so much, Dawn. That was a great presentation. Does anyone have any questions for Dawn? Just feel free to put those in the chat. I'm so glad that you brought up Vincent. He is so fun to work with. And I think the Adopt a Storm Drain, I know that's not something that's available across the country. So I think it's a really great starting point for really learning where water goes and where trash goes, and that it's not filtered by our wastewater treatment facilities. It's going right into a stream. And so really trying to
Yes.
stop pollution from the source in its various forms is really a great sort of segue into doing more within the community. And I hope that program expands, especially too.
Yes. Yes, agreed. And I love the aspect that you're bringing forth of empowering people to do more advocacy. As an organization and local governmental unit, we are limited in our capacity to do that. We do join forces with other watershed organizations we have in supporting legislation, the limited liability legislation that someone had mentioned also in the Q&A. And we do fully support that because we do see it as a barrier, the fear of liability, to get the parking lots and sidewalks better salted, minimally salted. So we are limited in how much advocacy we can do ourselves, but on that public front, but we are working behind the scenes in supporting that kind of legislation. So
Yeah, and
it's up to the citizens. Yeah.
absolutely. And thank you for bringing that up. That was a comment in the chat. Maybe not everybody can say it. I think it was just to hosts and panelists, but working with the state level to lobby unlimited liability legislation for private applicators. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, Minnesota has been doing some really great road salt trainings for the past number of years. And a lot of the trainings around the country for road salt applicators are actually based on the Minnesota Pollution Controls training. In 2013, New Hampshire started a Green Snow Pro program, which is a training program for road salt applicators within the private sector, or also, I guess, in the public sector if they wanted to join the training, but mainly for the private sector, to pass this certification training, to learn more about those smart salting best practices. And then anyone who takes and passes that training maintains that certification, and then records really detailed notes on how much salt they use per winter storm, what the weather conditions are, sort of all of those sorts of things. Those people and people who hire them are offered free limited liability protection against damages in the winter, such as slips and falls. And so it's a really great incentive program for road salt applicators to be able to use those best practices that they've learned during some of these really amazing trainings, and really not feel like they're going to be penalized for it if somebody does slip and fall in the winter and sues them. I've had a number of conversations with road salt applicators in Maryland, and they knowingly over-apply road salt because they know that if they are over-applying salt, even if they are spending quite a bit of money on that salt, they're going to be spending so much more money if they are actually sued for a slip and fall. And so a program like what I mentioned, Green Snow Pro program in New Hampshire, that really incentivizes them to use the proper amount of salt. That type of legislation was up in Minnesota the past couple of years, and we're really hoping that that goes to the state level again. Again, that incentive program for road salt applicators to follow those best practices, to learn more, and then to be given an incentive to be able to reduce the amount of salt that they're using throughout the private sector. So we're really hoping to see that bill again this year, and we will be posting an action alert. You can sign up for action alerts. Maybe Heather can put that link in the chat for any action alerts that come up during the winter time. Basically, it gives you a template letter, and it sends it directly to your rep, your state representative, to sign on to legislation that reduces road salt at the state level. And I know that there are some local level things going on as well, trying to reduce road salt across different municipalities too. So we would love to hear from you. If you would like to speak a little bit about your organization, we have about 15 minutes left in this webinar here today. So if you'd like to speak about your organization, put your hand up or put a comment in the chat, and I can actually unmute you and let you speak a little bit about your organization. Or if you have any questions for me or Kayla or Dawn, we'd love to answer some of those questions as well. So for those of you who might be considering to speak a little bit about your organization, feel free again, put your hand up or put your comment in the chat. I do want to go over some of the poll questions that we sort of put forward today. So the first one, because some of these might be helpful for your organization, just really where are people receiving their information and how you might be able to use that information for your organization. So how did you first hear about or get involved with Salt Watch? We had a couple people post through a local chapter of the Isaac Walton League or an email through the Isaac Walton League. Green Iowa AmeriCorps. It's another chat or another answer. I can't talk today, sorry. A master naturalist email, forwarded an email from a friend. So it seems like a lot of emails are going about. Heard about it from a colleague or a water education partner meeting. So some really great answers for that. Let's see. Our second poll question, what have you done beyond monitoring? So talk to people that I worked with, talk to my parents about reducing salt at home, spoke about salt reduction at a county fair booth. Awesome. Set up a program, Duluth with local Ikes and local Isaac Walton League, or sorry, local League of Women Voters for a membership to spread the word about chloride in state legislation. Awesome. We love to hear about things happening at the state level. Presented to our church community. That's great. Talk to a couple of neighbors and family. Awesome. Talk to a neighbor and reduce salt at home with family. That is fantastic. We love to see all of those steps that everybody is taking. So thank you so much for sharing those. And then some of the actions that we plan to take this year, a lot of people, 63%, or sorry, 75% of people said talk to your neighbor, 63% reduce salt at home, 38% write a letter to a representative, 25% write a letter to the editor, and then there were a couple of others which were there in the chat. Let's see. So again, work at the state level to lobby for limited liability legislation for private applicators, and to continue to post test strips to Facebook and include education. Those are all really, really great actions to take. A couple other poll questions to go through. What could help you leap the hurdle of going beyond monitoring and complete some sort of advocacy action? So maybe social media assets for a campaign with co-branding for your organization. Yeah, definitely. I know a lot of organizations that we've been speaking to lately, they sort of start now with making some of those social media posts ahead of time for the winter year. And that's something I can certainly be better about, is sort of come up with a little bit more of a toolkit. So if that's easy for some folks to do, you can just sort of plug in some of those social media posts, put your own branding on it, something like that. That's certainly something that I can work on, and spreading that for folks to use. Contact information or Facebook group for other volunteers to connect with one another, to coordinate activities and support one another. A coalition to work together towards limited liability legislation. Absolutely. Certainly something that would be great to do and that we all need to work together towards. Different talking points. Yeah, we do have some of those on our website, but I'm more than happy to share. We have sort of a presentation that I'm more than happy to share with folks. So feel free to email me, and I can give you a presentation that has all sorts of talking points at the bottom of it too. And then community groups that would be interested in action. Yeah, so really joining together. And that's what this webinar here today is really about, is we are starting the conversation here today. We're trying to figure out how to get people to really start with no background on road salt pollution, maybe not even realize that salt is a pollutant, going to getting those people to go out and monitor and really learn what's happening in their own backyards, and then turning those folks into advocates, reducing salt at home, starting from home, talking to their neighbors, and then sort of expanding and really feeling empowered to be able to make a change, not only within their home, but within their community and even their state. There's some really simple steps that you can take, and we're trying to be resources for everyone going forward. But again, we are more than happy to receive feedback for things too. So if there's resources like maybe a media kit or something that would be helpful for you, shoot me an email, because I'm sure that you're not the only one who's thinking that you need that resource going forward too. And that's what we're here again to talk about, is really have this be the starting point, and really starting to meet up and learn from each other going forward, and really make a difference for everyone. And then the last poll question that we had was, which salt reduction message most resonates with you? 92% was salt responsibly and protect native plants and animals. 25% salt responsibly and save money, 17% salt responsibly and protect drinking water, and then 8% was salt responsibly and protect your pet's feet, and another 8% was salt responsibly and protect infrastructure. So thank you so much for everyone who participated in those poll questions today. Again, if you have any questions, put those in the chat. And we'd be more than happy to answer those for you. And I did want to go back to the one question that was in the Q&A. It was, do you have any information on how salting is affecting the Mississippi River, and if there are any movements dedicated to raising awareness in states that border the Mississippi? Would anyone like to chime in to answer that question? Because if not, I think that is something. Oh, Dawn, are you thinking about chiming in?
Yes.
Okay.
I was just, we don't have information in our organization that we're looking at for that, but I was looking it up just now, and there is an article about it and how it has increased definitely since 1989. And so, of course, the best thing is prevention, since we can't remove the chloride or salt out of the water very easily, or at least cost effectively. So I could post this link into the chat if you'd like.
Yeah, that would be great. Okay, as Donna is posting that, again, this is really the start of the conversation. And I think it's also a great way to realize like who right now is at the table, and who is not part of the table that we're having these conversations with. Within the sort of road salting world, there are so many different stakeholders, and there's so many people who can make a difference, and there's really, really easy ways to make a difference. And I think also it's really important to make sure that we are working together as effectively as we can, because there is really a big balance that has to be made between environmental health and public safety. And a lot of times during the winter time, that public safety is going to come first, which it needs to, because we need to stay safe during the winter time. But we can all play our part in really having this conversation and bringing more people to the table to continue this conversation. And maybe this year we'll see some changes at the state level, and maybe that legislation goes further, and hopefully it passes to be able to have that applicator training program and incentives for applicators to start reducing more road salt within their communities. So thank you so much for attending this webinar today. Again, the webinar has been recorded, and so it will be posted online on our YouTube channel, hopefully by the end of the day today. So again, thank you so much for being part of this conversation. And this is not the end. This is really just the beginning of this conversation about road salt pollution in Minnesota and really across the country, and really how we can come together to make a difference. So thank you so much. Thank you to Kayla and Dawn for presenting today. And Heather, thank you for helping us out there in the background. And thank you for everyone who has attended. So thank you so much. And remember to be a smart salter this winter and spread the word as much as you can.